personal and beautiful.
Okay, let me touch you one moment to see what I'm talking about. Okay. Bueno. Okay. Bueno, we are here in Bogotá with Vincenzo, the creator of the Now technique, technique that has impressed me a lot in my work with myself and with my students, and I asked him if I could make him an interview, and he said yes. So now I start to ask you, Vincenzo, how did you begin being Vincenzo?
How I began to be Vincenzo?
Yes. How everything started. Okay, how everything started. Yes.
With the technique.
With the technique.
Okay.
Yes.
The technique is the evolution of a journey of self-discovery, of self-understanding. I always had this inclination to understand what life was for me, and I have asked for a long time questions to myself, like a question, what is the meaning of my life, and how can I experience meaning and peace and understanding. And I discovered that it was important for me to understand who I was emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I dedicated chunks of periods of research to the body, to the emotions, to thinking. And then I discovered that more I experienced those aspects of research, more they were all connected with each other. So through the years, I started to investigate how my physical sensations and physical reactions were connected with my emotions, and how my emotions were connected with my thinking, and how my thinking was connected with my imagination, with my inspiration, with my intuition, and how all of this together was contributing to create a more coherent, more complete understanding of my life. I discovered that every time that I could reorganize my thinking and my feeling and my perception in a way that I would feel at peace and harmony with life, then I could relax and I could have a greater understanding of life. I then started to share this multiple attention with others. So I started to facilitate for others, and the first one was my father when he was sick with lung cancer. And I helped him to pay attention to what was happening to his breath from one moment to the next one. I helped him to become aware of what was going on with his body from one moment to the next one, with his emotions, with his thoughts, with his imagination. And this, little by little, became clear that it was a possible path of integration. This is how the Now technique has evolved.
So you started in a way by searching your own questions, and then by wanting to heal and or accompany your father.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the kind of an act of love towards the other.
Yes, an act of love, an act of presence. Being present with my father in the moment in which he needed most brought me to gather from all my experience the essence, put it together in a way that could give him relief and meaning to his experience. And it was successful. We had many moments in which he could release completely, find meaning, and be at peace with this disease. After that, I started to facilitate the process with others, and it has progressively become more clear and more refined as a process. And I have a deep passion for understanding what it is that makes the process working, what it is that makes the process really relevant for the individual.
Yeah, for me it has been very relevant in my own experience to learn how to really feel me. I want to ask you now, you told me you had a spiritual teacher, that you learned a lot from a man who is already dead, no? But he was very profound influence into your learning. Could you tell me a little bit more about this person?
Yes. His name was Jean Klein, and he was a medical doctor who at a certain point of his life went to India. This was in the beginning of the 50s. And in India he encountered his teacher, and he was introduced to a very ancient wisdom from India that he integrated beautifully with his understanding and with his sensitivity. He brought back all of this wisdom to the Western world, and I met him when I was 25 years old, and I spent time with him, and I was introduced to this way of participating to life in a very open and appreciative way.
You told me that you've learned some form of yoga, that it's come from the ancient Kashmir, if I'm correct. That has to do with these teachings of this master?
Yeah, he taught me two traditions. One is the Kashmiri Shaivism tradition, is a yoga tradition, and the other one is Advaita Vedanta, is a metaphysical tradition from India. They both point to the same reality in a different way. He integrated the two teachings in a very graceful, profound, intelligent way. It did not emphasize much the traditional teachings when I met him. I know he did it before. But he synthesized his understanding and his experience into something that we Westerners could relate to. And fundamentally, he taught how to feel, listen, perceive, and experience reality directly, with all our being, with all our body, with all our emotions, with all our mind, without putting things into categories and without coming to judgments or conclusions, but remaining open so that we can perceive life with the innocent eye.
With an innocent eye.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. The other day you were doing a lecture, and during that lecture you were talking about how we get into boxes and how we don't pay attention to our inner channel. I like that metaphor of paying attention to our inner experience or an inner channel. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I use the metaphor of watching what is happening within, like if we are watching a television channel. most of our lives as very busy social hands is dedicated to paying attention to survival, economic achievements, and social status, and lots of relationships which take all of our attention, and very little time is dedicated to really observe what happens within, feel what happens within. So I use the metaphor of, instead of watching a TV channel outside, let's watch a movie inside as it happens from one moment to the next. And I said in the beginning, let's start to pay attention, for example, to how the breath function in this movie that we are watching. Let's see how the body sensations are evolving from one moment to the next, how our emotions are changing from one moment to the next, how our imagination is playing in this movie that we watch within, and how our thinking. So I use the metaphor of watching the movie within, because it is easy for people to relate to the fact that there is something that we can observe and that we can participate in that can reveal something meaningful and can reveal from one moment to the next one changes that, unless we are consciously aware of, they go lost. To me, to return to the innocent eye, to the innocent observation, it is necessary to begin to pay attention to our experiences. More we pay attention to our experiences, more we become appreciative of all the layers of our experience. In those layers of our experience, there is the fabric of life, the texture of life. So the now technique is a metaphor and a practical, well-defined map of how to explore this inner fabric of reality.
While I'm listening to you, I'm feeling like peace, and at the same time some inquietude. It's like what we say in Gestalt. You know, I'm a Gestalt therapist. We say that we go through different layers of experience. So the first one is like being in touch with stereotypes and outside, and then the other one is the psychological games we play with each other, and then the third one is called impasse. It's a layer in which I'm not still paying attention to the outer world, and now I'm not yet in touch with my inner experience. It's like a land of nobody. There's some inquietude, and the recommendation is to stay there and spend time in order to go through a more profound layer that you are talking about. But how do you deal with the emptiness or with the void that we Westerners try to avoid by watching TV channels or eating, or all kinds of stimuli to get lost of oneself?
Well, the now technique is an education to expand the lens of our perception. So the breath has many layers of perception that can be investigated. The body has many layers of perception that can be investigated. Emotionally, we have many layers of perception that can be investigated. Our mind, with our thoughts and the images in our mind equally. I believe that the void that we experience as Westerners, it's a lack of appreciation for this subtle realm of perception that is available to us, but to which we are not accustomed to pay attention. So we confuse the perception of something subtle with emptiness, because we are accustomed to grab onto ideas, concepts, experiences, pleasure, pain, but there is a whole universe in between all of those. There is a continuum of reality that we are simply not sensitive enough, not educated enough to perceive.
That makes me again want to think about Gestalt therapy. We talk about the continuum of awareness, and what I like about learning from you is that you really experience, and from a different influences, you talk about things that I like a lot, and you really incarnate those values. So you were learning from an ancient discipline from your master. You have been a seeker all your life, as you said. You use your skills to be with your father in his last period of life, which also touches me because I also accompany a little bit my father. And now you are very excited into neuroscience, and that is also something we have in common in the aspect of humanism. Therapies like Gestalt therapy and other therapies nowadays have been proven to be very good at working with the brain. So something we did before in an intuitive way, now we know it's proven. And I like to learn a lot from you, all your skills on neuroscience. How do you link, because you are a master of linking emotions and thoughts, and how do you link the ancient wisdom with the high-tech, modern technology of our brain?
Well, neuroscience is contributing tremendously now to help us to understand more of how we function. It helps us to understand a little bit more of what we are, and it's opening the door for a greater alignment to the natural architecture of ourselves as human beings. So I believe that the traditional teachings that I received, both of Advaita Vedanta and the Kashmiri Shaiva traditions, were the experience of thousands of years of research from spiritual seekers who were very close to their nature as human beings. Neuroscience is simply helping us to understand how we function physiologically, neurologically, and what is the base for our behavior, the base for fear, the base for aggression and defense, the base for change, the base for the transformation of something which is unconscious into something conscious. I see no separation between the teachings that I have received and what I am learning from neuroscience, from neurobiology. I actually see that there is a very consistent understanding that as human beings we need to function with the understanding that the body, the heart and the mind are in reality a continuum, and that as long as we remain open to experience reality with all our perceptions, with all our sensations, all our emotions, with all our thinking, then we have a possibility of finding ourselves as a whole human being and living an integrated reality. So neuroscience, neurobiology is confirming what we have always known, traditionally, philosophically, spiritually, metaphysically, that reality is one with many, many, many different expressions. In that sense, I am fascinated by the discoveries that we are collectively making now that confirm that deep intuition that we carry within. I am one, you are one, we are one. There are infinite different expressions of this oneness, and there are states in which we kind of lose the perception of that oneness, which are usually associated with trauma, stress, pain, which we don't know how to elaborate.
So going more to the technique, because you when I met you the first time, I told you why you call it a technique, not because you are such a poet and such a seeker, and technique, the word technique for me is a little bit technique, as I said, but really it's a technique in a way of because it gives you the tools to really work with oneself. So could you explain me, like very briefly, or
Yes.
how it begins, the technique? Or
The technique, the symbol of the now technique has become a butterfly. A butterfly has two wings, and those two wings allow us to fly, no? Which means to move forward, to transcend the present moment experience, which might be chaotic, confusing, painful, and become engaged into a transformation. The two wings of the butterfly represent the pillars of the technique. One pillar is the understanding that in order to transform what pains us, we have to return to a state of fluidity, to a state of coherence. And this state of fluidity and coherence is really a physiological state. It's a state in which the breath and the heart recover a state of harmony. This is one of the two wings of the butterfly. The other wing of the butterfly says that when we are in a state of physiological coherence, then it's possible to use the skills of the mind to perceive and to discriminate and to link together different aspects of our experience into something which is more coherent and more whole can happen. So the technique has identified fundamentally those two very important steps which needs to happen. One, we need to return to a state of relaxation and alertness in which we can feel harmony beginning in our hearts. And two, then we can use the discriminative power of our intellect to investigate the different aspects of our experience and to observe clearly, to feel clearly, to differentiate clearly, and to bring together into a coherent whole our experience. So it is a technique because it outlines clearly those steps.
okay, let me see if I understand it. First of all, we need a state in order to recover our inner balance, in a way, going from the stress response when we have been traumatized, that we all have been traumatized in a way, no? We could say some people more and some people less. So first, to recover that inner balance, and then from that point we can start to work of what is separated and try to integrate it, or integrate it.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. It's recovering a state of relaxation, which is our natural state, and this corresponds to physiological changes. And enter into a different disposition towards ourselves. We enter in a disposition in which we shift from judging, reacting, rejecting to our experience, to be more lovingly disposed.
And that sometimes is difficult on a psychological way, no? I mean, I work with people, and it has happened to me many times that, yeah, I know the theory that I need to love myself, but I'm pissed with myself, and it's a physical feeling. It's like, ugh. So you help yourself with the technique to create like an inner change.
Sí.
That helps a lot, no? Because when I do the technique, or I feel better by touching myself, I can start to be more at peace with me.
Exactly. We use a physiological mechanism which we call sensory motor and breathing appreciation, which opens the communication between all the parts of the nervous system. When this happens, the physiology changes, and there are actual brain changes that allows for greater communication and integration of the experiences.
So we walk from one part to the other, from the response, from the stress to the relaxation.
Exactly.
And it's not a relaxation of being like, no. It's a relaxation that it also has to do with being alert.
It's alert relaxation. It is called autonomic arousal, which means that both the sympathetic and parasympathetic part of our nervous system are awakening to their functions, and they harmonize to each other, so that there is a greater alertness, and in the same time there is also a greater peace. So when we are in a state of greater alertness and greater peace, we can begin to look into the issues that usually affect us, to which we usually react, to which we usually that usually have the power to confuse us, to make us feel helpless, insecure, and we use this state of alert relaxation to really identify one element after the other, how the experience is created in us, how the breath is responding to that particular state.
Because you say that, for example, fear has a specific way of breathing, or in each one of us. I would like you to talk a little bit more about fear, because it's something very universal, no? That is very stressful, and it's like I relate fear with not being in the here and now, but being more like in the future. It's gonna happen something. You told me that you have experienced a lot of work with your fears and with other people, and now you become friends with it. How is that thing?
It is obvious, even though not too many do acknowledge it fully, that our lives are driven by fear. There is fear in the world, in everything that we see. As human beings, we carry fear as a response of survival. It's a very useful response. It's necessary for us to prevent us from putting ourselves in danger, and it has been for millions of years our protector. Today, as we are fast evolving, consciously taking responsibility for our responses, learning to deal with fear is a very important and necessary skill. The way I've learned to deal with fear is by simply becoming interested in fear. And instead of trying to reacting to fear, I become interested in observing how fear works in me. So every time that I experience a state of fear, I ask myself, now that I am experiencing fear, what is happening with my breathing? What is happening in my body? Where in the body do I feel this fear? And I take time to become really aware of the fear. I take time to observe it, to feel it, to listen to the fear. And as I take that time, something in the brain changes. There is a region in the brain that starts to modulate the emotional response to fear. It's like bringing together consciousness and experience. And as consciousness and experience start to first communicate and link together, they come together and fear transforms itself
into
consciousness.
Into consciousness.
It becomes consciousness of the present moment reality. My breath returns to be deep, relaxed. My body returns to be relaxed and alert. Emotionally, I find myself again open and well disposed to life. I do not imagine dangerous or painful situation, and I'm starting to think that life is okay. Life is in reality rich.
Now I'm feeling that life is okay in this moment. Being here with you, I feel it's okay. And it's good for me listening to all of these sounds of nature and being with you. I remember the other day in a lecture you were saying that the ego is like the one that it's in between experience and consciousness, something like that. Could you, because I thought it was a very good description of the ego.
Yeah, well, my understanding of the ego is that it is what interferes between my present moment awareness and the experience that is around me, that is happening here and now. So let's say I am here talking to you and I'm really interested in this dialogue. I have no thoughts crossing my mind and interfering with the flow of meaning that happens between the two of us. But if there was a part of myself that was, for example, afraid, that was anxious, that was impatient, my mind would start to try to manipulate my responses, would start to create a disturbance in my attention to this present moment. So my definition of the ego is that the ego is what interferes between ourselves and the experience of what is.
Now this reminds me to the movies of Fellini, that there's always like the sound of somebody commenting what is happening. So that's the way it, in my case, my ego disturbs by commenting what is going on. So that's great. So we're talking about fear, and now, okay, first getting the relaxation response, so meaning getting out a step away from the fear and the stress.
Yes.
And then going very deeply, because I've seen in your work that you go very deeply into the trauma. No, I remember you first say, okay, what is not working now with you, or what is being painful, and then you make like a kind of a regression using the body, and also looking for the history, you say, the movie that we have attached to that feeling. I found it very interesting and very effective. That
Yeah. We usually react to painful experiences and we try to avoid to feel them. We try to avoid to perceive them and to understand them. My work.
So you say we usually refuse to experience those things.
Yeah.
That has to do a lot of with Gestalt therapy. That at the beginning, Gestalt therapy was called therapy of concentration, like getting focus on what is painful. So Sorry, I'm interrupting a little
Yes.
bit because it's the plane, and also I wanted to introduce that. Okay, so we usually avoid painful situations.
Yes. It is a very instinctive response. Try to protecting ourselves from the pain. It is also a priority of our nervous system when pain is experienced to try to protecting us from more pain to come. If pain is repeated, then we get locked into this protective mode. And instead of processing and elaborating the pain that we are now carrying in the body, in the heart, in the mind, we tend to get locked into a state in which the only concern is to protecting us from more pain to come.
That's when we are traumatized.
When we are traumatized. Most of us are traumatized, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, or socially traumatized. As the children of this planet, we are all traumatized in a way or another. It is necessary in order to clear the traumatic memories from the old system to reestablish a conscious appreciation of the body, a conscious appreciation of our emotions, a conscious appreciation of the way our mind works. Before we can come to really feel peace and love towards ourselves, there are probably many layers of pain that disturb us, that continues to get triggered every time that there is a stress involved, or there are situations which remind us of a possible suffering which can be caused by external events. The now technique is using these two wings of the butterfly, in which one, we learn to find peace in our heart, in our bodies, and then we go deep into the perception of our breath, deep into the perception of our bodies, deep in the perception of our emotions, of our thoughts and our images. And as we go deeper into this direct perception, the brain begins to process all the memories, and it begins to regulate them. And as a result of this elaboration and of this regulation, the memory is transformed into a fact of life. It's simply one experience in our journey of life. We return to see life as a continuum in which painful things and joyful things happen. And our capacity to perceive is recovered.
Okay, so if I understand, in a way, what we try to do is to get tuned with ourselves in a friendly way by our breath and our body, and then we focus on whatever is unsolved, that it appears, that what we say in Gestalt in Spanish is called situación inconclusa, like unfinished business is called in English, unfinished business. So then we we focus on this unfinished business, and with the body we track it down in order to see what beliefs are in that unfinished business and how that, when it started, and then by observing in a loving way and being with ourselves, something happens, something transforms. It's kind of magical. It's not that we need to do a lot of stuff for fixing it.
Actually, the unfinished business comes naturally to the surface of our experience. We don't have to look for. The cause we don't have to look for. It comes to the surface as we cultivate a state of greater fluidity, of greater coherence. The body naturally uses this state of greater coherence to return to a state of homeostasis, to a state of communication, optimal communication between the different parts. And whatever is in between the communication of the different systems or the communication within the brain comes to the surface. And it is brought to our attention in a way that if we really stay with it, if we really pay attention to it, it kind of dissolves its energy, its content, its autobiographical memory, and it returns to a state in which we are simply this flow of life in which there is not much space for the past, not much space for the future. There is only space for the fact that we are alive. So being alive means I am breathing, and the breath is conscious, natural, fluid. My body is here now, and I am aware of my body.
Now, when you were explaining me, a metaphor appeared in my consciousness. It's like that unfinished business. It will be like a messenger that is saying, "I have something for you. I have something for you." And then when we pay attention to it into our inner channel, it's like, "Okay, I give the message. Okay, I can go." Something like that.
Exactly. I have completed my function. I have used the energy to deliver the information. Now the energy and the information can merge into a flow of energy and information that carries all my past experience and all my present experience.
So we can come back to the unity of consciousness and experience here and now without the contamination of our unfinished business.
Without the part of ourselves that says, I have something to tell you, why don't you listen to me? I have something to communicate to you, why you are not feeling what I want to give you.
It's so surprising for me always that I talk, I get to understand better what I've learned in a different, a new way. So point in the two wings, we were saying the first wing is to get into like relaxation,
Yes.
Relationship with ourselves. The second wing is to listen to us, and whatever it needs to happen happens. And you are very specific into different parts of listening to us, like or thoughts or images and or feelings or body or breathe, letting go whatever needs to happen. And what else then? Just go to enjoy life and go to it, or now, or what else would you like to add to that?
Well, there is a gift within the human being that we are just beginning to appreciate, and the gift is called self-regulation. Self-regulation tells me that whatever I really become aware of, what I can pay attention from a state of alert relaxation and sustain that attention to for whatever time is needed, it will begin to self-regulate and dissolve. If I have pain in my stomach, I can do several things. One is try to avoid it. I don't listen to that pain. Or I listen to and I want to do something like, for example, taking a painkiller, taking something for the stomach. Or I can return to my breath, I can return to my body, I can listen to the pain in the stomach. And as I listen to it without reacting, without trying to manipulate it, without trying to come to a conclusion, to justify or finding a cause, but I just perceive it, just tune into it. More I tune into it, more the exchange of energy information between the central nervous system and the stomach regulates the pain response, the emotional response, the whole flow of the informations, and through this regulation the body finds its way and they return to wholeness.
While I'm listening to you, I'm starting to do this movement that you use a lot with the technique. I remember you said it's very powerful or hard, not metaphorically, but really on a scientific point of view. Could you tell us some facts about our heart and how, for example, if I have pain in my stomach, it's useful, as I understood, to put one hand on my stomach and the other one in the heart as a communication?
Yes. We are now discovering that the heart is much more than just a physical pump, but is actually the most powerful electromagnetic center in the whole body. It also produces different hormones which are they can be very beneficial to the rest of the system. What we do with the technique is to support the communication between the different parts of the body, and the centering in the heart and the communication between the heart and the body is very important to establish the flow of energy and information that moves through what usually we experience as blocks, as resistances. Because the body is the strongest electromagnetic center in the body, to focus our attention into the heart establishes a stronger heart field, which is capable of integrating and leading the rest of the energy in the body-mind towards coherence, towards the coherence of the heart. The fact that we are paying attention to the breath and to the heart centers reinforce further this electromagnetic field of the heart.
Which feels very good. Whenever I put my hand here in the heart, and as I learn with you, I feel it's like the stress goes like down.
Exactly. Because stress is often the result of where we put our attention. If I acknowledge the fact that my well-being comes from being conscious of being here in my body, breathing, acknowledging the fact that my heart is the center of my experience, this reinforces the sense of being safe and of being at home and of being conscious of what I am. If I focus on thinking, which continues to project the possibility of more pain, more suffering, more fear, more danger, more insecurity, more mistrust, then I am fueling all this activity which perpetuates disturbance in the system.
So it's all a matter of getting focus on oneself, and then letting ourselves the time for whatever needs to appear.
Yes, I would say feeling conscious of what is vital. So the breath is vital, the heart center is vital, recovers a sense of safety, a sense of presence, of being here now, and then use the skills of the intellect to go and investigate precisely our experience, to see what in our experience is a sensation and where that sensation is in the body, to what in our experience is fear or anxiety or insecurity or joy, to what in our experience is an image that comes from our past, that tells us life is difficult, life is dangerous, you're not safe,
Yes.
or images which are actually more friendly, more loving, more secure, and to discover what thoughts are driving us in direction of the insecurity, and which thoughts are actually reinforcing what our heart already knows, that life is in reality a meaningful, coherent experience.
Well, it's very nice to talk with you. I have many other questions to ask you. For example, how do you apply this into our world? Because one thing it really impressed me of your teachings is you say, and I think this comes from the Kashmir tradition, that we are a universe of oneself. Each one we are a universe, so we have everything. And how do you apply this work? How could this work change the world as it is now, that we are killing each other and having all of this trauma? We are getting traumatized every day. What is your vision of the world?
Yeah, well, the word is us, each one of us, and as we recover a sense of safety and trust, and as we recover the faith or trust that it is possible to transform trauma and suffering into a meaningful understanding, we are changing our individual reality. More we change that individual reality, more we bring to the vision of the world a different perspective. And that different perspective is ultimately what changes the world. Is the fact that more people understand that trauma and that separation and fragmentation are just disturbed states, but that our natural state is to recover that sense of continuity which we have with all life. I don't have the ambition of changing the whole world. I have the right and the appreciation for the possibility of transforming my experience and my vision of life.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo. I think we can let for other day the more specific training into the technique. I think we can find that at your webpage, no? That is called thenowtechnique.com. Thank you very much for your time. I love being with you. It's like being in touch with the relaxation response. So maybe we can have a juice or something.
A good juice, why not?
Well,
juice and salad.
And thank you, Jose Alejandro, for
thank you
recording us, and Barbara, the beautiful
my partner and assistant.
Your partner and assistant, so beautiful.
And co-creator and co-developer.
And everything.
And everything.
And everything in my life. Kashmir. Bueno, bien, ¿no? Yo creo que está bien. Bien.